Hello, you are tuning in to AWANI Review with me, Cynthia Ng. Now, joining me today is a very special guest. Her name is Stephanie Peng. She is the CEO and co-founder of Work, a co-working space provider. Now, co-working space was hard hit by the pandemic when people were forced into lockdowns and to self-isolate. But at the same time, with the pandemic, there's also a rise in different work environments, for instance, hybrid work and also flexible work arrangements. And how has all these changes impact co-working space provider? And that's what we're about to discuss today. Thank you so much, Stephanie, for having me here at Work. And it's great to see the crowd back in the office.
Yeah, it's very lively and vibrant, and we certainly miss having all these interactions with our awesome community members. That's what we call our customers, and also people who come here to interact, but not necessarily want a space. It's really nice to have everyone back.
It's really great because it's been a while for me to also do a face-to-face interview. So I think interaction is something that we all miss very much. Let me just dive into the basics first. Let's start with Work. How did you start Work, and what is your mission?
I think it goes back generationally. Why I had the inspiration to start Work. My grandfather was a businessman who came from China, and he started from nothing, and he started a really what I heard was a really successful business, and it was one of the largest in its industry. But then when he passed away, it fell into trustees' hands, which were not managing really well. So it went to my dad to take over the business. At that point, it was in bad shape. It was in a lot of debt, and it was not doing well. So when my dad was 21 years old, he was called back from university overseas to manage the business. And being a young, fresh person, it was really hard for him to be in that situation. But he and my grandmother really leveraged a group of friends, business people who helped them out, and that whole community really rallied, and because of that they built the business back up again in the legacy of my grandfather, and they even got it back to doing well, and even managed to pay it off all the debts, as well as take whatever that they can to buy off the trustees that were not doing their jobs then. So what I could see really strongly when I went to school in Stanford University was this community was also present in Silicon Valley, and it was the same here in Malaysia for the business people and over there. So I wanted to start a place where the helpfulness culture will help businesses take off and thrive, and then allow people to provide for their lives and then bring their jobs to success. So that's where all this came about.
Yeah, certainly. A co-working space is essentially a melting pot of people and entrepreneurs, and drawing inspiration and also support from people around here. Okay, let's just talk a bit more on technicalities, and also just a bit more about the business. How big of a space do you have at the moment, and how many outlets are you in?
We have 100,000 square feet, well, almost 97,000 square feet, and we have 4 outlets, and that's about, I want to say, it might have gone up since the pandemic because some other places probably closed down. It was about 13% of the market share, and I think it's a good amount of space to have. We're still expanding and adding more and more customers, as well as I like to call them wider community. They're not necessarily paying customers, but they come to the space, or they're in our chat rooms and all that, interacting with all our customers, with each other, to help each other out in this very productive community, so that they all prosper by working together.
All right. Now, you mentioned about some of this business that had to shut down during the pandemic when non-essential work were forced to basically shut down. Co-working spaces were badly impacted, naturally, given that everyone was forced to self-isolate. With so many people working from home, what has it been like to sustain the business over the past 2 years when all this were happening?
Yeah, I think we did relatively well in the 2 years of pandemic, where even In 2020, we turned profitable, and then we're still extremely sustainable and financially sound throughout it all. And to do that, I think starts with the customers as well. We did not go down to zero. We have a lot of customers that needed temporary space as well as essential services in our spaces. And that really covered a lot of the attrition that happened during that time. Yeah, companies that went digital also needed more space during the COVID times, and those are the companies that also came to us. So yeah, I think just making the product very, it has value. People will come even during bad times, but certainly it was way harder than normal times for COVID, MCO especially.
The pandemic has shifted the way companies operate, where more firms have or are still implementing hybrid work. You know, looking at the traffic flow on my way here to your office, it seems like things are back to normal. Is that so for you?
Things are definitely back to normal and better because now we've gone through a whole work from home experiment, and that has caused a lot of companies to rethink how they work. So in the past, you got to go to the office, you got to go to the HQ, you got to go Mondays to Fridays. But now hybrid work is really on a lot of companies' minds, and they're implementing it. So using co-working spaces like our spaces is extremely productive for them, and no longer are they required to have one HQ downtown. They allow people to work from closer to their homes everywhere. And flexibility is something that is taking off.
Do you see companies try to scale down office space now that we are emerging from the pandemic? And we have tested hybrid working, seems to work for some, maybe not for others, but do you see that's changing right now?
Oh, absolutely. What we see is that companies practice a rotational thing. Mm-hmm. I think it must have been Harvard Business Review that did a study that recommends like a 3-2-2 adoption, 3 days at work, 2 days at home, and 2-day weekend. And then what we're seeing is that companies require, let's say, 50 desks, but really we are issuing 80 to 100 key cards, and they're rotating in the space. And then they have this in maybe several other outlets and so forth. And they need sort of a company like ours to help them manage all of that rotational and also have flex space for them. Why get your own office now when really you have downsized a number of head count at any time per usage, when it's gone from 80 to 50, 300 to 100 at any one time, and you really can give up a large HQ space. You can keep that as a core and then complement it with the flex services that we provide.
Apart from the physical place that you provide, what other added value do you bring to, say, employers wanting to set up a space at work?
Yeah, I think the biggest one is flexibility, which is you can scale up your headcount size at the drop of a hat. You can also scale it down at any time. If you find that your usage is all of a sudden a lot less, then scale down the key cards. But at the same time, the community, especially for SMEs, and startups is very, very important. You need to make sure, like as a small company, you don't have all the resources of a big company, but competitive. So you leverage and collaborate with other people in the space and basically help each other out. And that's how you remain very competitive, price yourself well because you don't have all these costs. And yet the camaraderie is, for example, help my dad build back up a company, and that's very real even today.
Okay. Well, I understand that almost 60% of your tenants or your renters are made up of people from multinational corporations. Correct me if I'm wrong, this is what I've read recently. What can you tell us about work arrangements that these companies are taking post-pandemic compared to local firms, for instance? Is they more open to such a flexible and hybrid work environment in a different location than the HQ? What are you observing?
Well, in the past, this kind of work style was adopted by startups. The only big companies that adopted it were tech companies. And then the SMEs adopted it because it's what they need, the community, the flexibility, the cost, right? You don't have to invest in your own interior design, for example, as a sunk cost from the start. Now what we are seeing is that large companies, MNCs, foreign MNCs find this very attractive because yes, you have a large workforce, 1,000, let's say. If you know how to plan, which part of it you've already done during COVID on how people work remotely, then this really helps them scale their team and also give employee wellness and engagement to their staff in a way that fits the lifestyle of today's working adults, mothers, that kind of thing.
Okay. Mothers, very interesting topic. I want to get to that a bit later on in the show. Just wanted to also touch on sustainability of running a co-working business. Co-working space experienced quite a big boom before the pandemic. We saw so many coming up, came up before the pandemic in especially in the city center, but a lot of them also went out of business, largely for failing to meet lease payments and drop in demand. What is your observation in that? Did they misread the market? Was it bad timing, or is this not enough demand in Malaysia?
Actually, the demand is huge. Statistically, Malaysia's penetration rate, means number of co-working space used over number of total office space, is just at 1%, but the Asian average is at 3%. So we're lagging by even unmet demand of 2%. All this is going to go up to 30% in the next 10 years, according to Jones Lang LaSalle, the property consultant company. So the demand is huge. It's just that when an industry is at the infancy, some players might not have figured out the model yet, and they tried all kinds of stuff that might not work. And then sustainability is the name of the game. Like, perhaps some players might have been chasing the tech dream where, expand a lot with no regard too much for like customers of whether they're going to pay for it, profitability. Is your business model working? Don't just open sites just for the sake of opening sites or claiming that you have a lot of square footage, because that's cost to you.
Correct.
At the end of the day, because of that, we really survived the COVID pandemic because we built the thing strong, and then when something bad happens, you can withstand it pretty well.
I want to talk about the business model for co-working space. As far as I understand, it used to be that the landlord took very to little no risk, so meaning all the risk is mainly on the tenant. What's a more sustainable arrangement? What's the arrangement for you, and what do you think it's a better approach to ensure longevity of the business?
Yeah, I mean, landlords, there's a lot of real estate in the market now. A lot of spaces, and landlords are fighting for tenants. A lot of the tenants the landlord cannot get are people who are using a small number of seats, 50, 10, 5. The landlords cannot possibly manage many small different tenants, but that's where we come in. So if you think about it, to manage also large companies with their flexi-work style is also not in the general business of a landlord. So we're actually partners. Just like how hotel operators like Hilton and so forth do not own the actual physical building. They are the professionals in running a hotel's operations. Then you as a building owner, you employ them to do a better job than yourself can, and you do what you're good at, be a landlord, and then you share the spoils, I guess, from that.
So it's a revenue sharing basis.
Revenue sharing, management contract, and that might sound a little bit like, oh, why should I be paying somebody to run this for me? What is the cost for you to be doing this? I've known, like certain companies that invest like, say, 10, 20 million into trying to run a co-working space that is not their core business and have not succeeded, wasted time on top of cost, when actually the management is a lot cheaper and it preserves the brand of your building as well. So I've had landlords that are our investors who actually decided that they've got a mall, they're just going to really partner with someone in a management firm or whatever it might be, and it's gone successful. This is in Singapore. So yeah.
I definitely see the value of plug and play, the flexibility of a co-working space environment. Talk to us about trends. What are you observing, and how might things change now that we're emerging from the pandemic?
Well, trends. Landlord, for one, is definitely much more open to working together with us as partners. So we've, renegotiated some of the contracts that we have with them, and they see the high margins that we enjoy. They want to be part of that as well. The other trend is that a lot of companies, like I've mentioned, are really not thinking of getting their own HQ, or at least complementing a core flex solution to way smaller core HQ and a bunch of co-working spaces, and then giving them this like work from home benefit, which is huge now. Yeah.
Okay, so that's the business part, about work and how strategies and whatnot. One of the reasons why I wanted to speak with you as well to talk about women, and you mentioned mothers earlier. As we emerge from the pandemic, I think what our discussion has been focused on lately is how can businesses build a more inclusive working environment, especially to improve outcomes for women in the workforce. So many women desire to return to the workforce, but not necessarily in the same capacity as before. How can the reshaping of existing work arrangements help meet the needs of women to help them re-enter the workforce, or just basically have a better working environment for, maybe not just women, for all of us?
All of us, yeah. I mean, I think women, mothers, there's a huge untapped potential for a workforce that is still, they want to work, and companies can tap into their talent to, advance themselves. And flexible work style works really well for women, for mothers, because they need to have some time for their children. So coming to work in like a flexible style, like whenever they need to, and then nearer to their homes or different locations for them to drop in and drop out of, is very sustainable for mothers' working lifestyle. And if companies provide that, I can see, even in conversation with my friends, they would say, if I can find a company that would allow this, I would return to the workforce. If not, my kids would come first. So yeah, it definitely helps women come back to work. We employ a lot of working mothers, and we give flexibility, and it's worked out phenomenally well for the mothers as well as for us as a company.
Okay, and from the co-working space perspective, how can you support that further to advance, to have more women back into the workforce with the arrangements that you have just mentioned?
Yeah, so a company can say, okay, I'm going to implement a work from home policy. I'm going to, let people use all these spaces. And then I'm going to have all these technology tools to also connect people. I would like to have, say, for mothers that just had babies, mother's room for them to pump breast milk at the work, because you kind of have to do that all 24/7. We'll have like sleep pods so that they can rest. We have the supportive community. If you have a mother that return to work, they're going to need to learn a lot of new things that's advanced, say digital marketing and so forth. And because we have a very supportive community here, you can ask anybody any question, and they'll be very happy to help you get back into the groove. So amenities, location, office conveniences, and in our spaces we have Jaya Grocer and other grocers around. This kind of conveniences, clinic, will really help. Like get off work, go to the grocer, do a little bit of banking, go home, go to another outlet, have a meeting, go see your kids, go home. That is a integrated work and lifestyle that mothers would really appreciate.
As a mother yourself, I'm curious to know, during the pandemic, working from home, a lot of this work fell on the mother, the parenting. You got to work, and also you got to educate your child at the same time. How has that shaped your thinking now when you're running a co-working space? Has it changed at all?
Oh yeah, I mean, I think childcare is paramount for a country's economy, and for the future of mankind. Like, it's pretty important to be really there as a mom for your children. Does this mean that you cannot have a career? Absolutely not, because I think it's nice to have a balance between work life as well as home life. And what we do is to really, even in our own company, give flexibility to mothers and encourage them. We encourage mothers to apply to us because we look out and give preference to working mothers, and we support them. And I think working in a supportive community helped me see also that people don't have to be your traditional, what you think of as the best candidate, right? Like someone with, say, no social life, just want to work all the time. Like who's like that, right? Some people, but if you want to have a sustainable business, you better make it work for everybody. So seeing many businesses in a place help you get that mindset, help you have a worldview on how to run your business, and it's great to, then for us to accommodate mothers and so forth.
Did you feel the pressure during the pandemic, personally?
Oh, actually, I was quite okay. I think we were preparing for, we didn't know the pandemic is going to come or a downturn, but we have always been preparing because we know like cycles come and go, maybe around 5 years. So we built the business profitable, sustainable, and sometimes, it's not the worst thing. The silver lining was that we knew flexibility is going to come, and also we will surge ahead of the market if we remain strong. So it's an opportunity. Yeah.
All right. So moving away from trends and going back to talking about encouraging women in the workforce, I think earlier before the show we were having a discussion about just how women, they want to do it all. They want to be able to parent, to educate their child, at the same time to work, but also having an environment that allows you to thrive for wanting to do a lot. But unfortunately, what we are facing right now is still what some people would term as the motherhood penalty, where there are systemic disadvantages against women who they face in their careers after having children, for instance, in terms of pay, in terms of benefits, and I think most importantly is the perceived lack of competence compared to your co-workers who are not mothers. What are your thoughts about that, and are we moving away from that kind of mindset, do you think?
I think certainly we're moving away more than in the past, but it's still there. What was the term again?
Motherhood penalty.
Okay, motherhood penalty. I think, not heard of that, but what I've heard is, certainly I've actually heard of conversations where people disadvantage an applicant for a job because they're a mother, because they're a single mother, that kind of thing. And I wouldn't stand for that, right? I would speak up and say that's not right. The candidate, if they can manage their life in their job, it's really irrelevant, but it's still being said. So I think people who care would naturally want to come up with policies to help. But even if you, even if you don't, if it's very transactional, there's still really, what I want to say is that there's a lot to be, a lot of value to have mothers in your company, because they bring a kind of resilience to your team, and they make really good decisions, because managing a team is very much like managing your own children. You want to coach them, you want them to develop, and also you want to love them, but you don't want to spoil them. And so, encouraging them and giving the right environment to learn and be trained, and then it's the same thing, actually. So if you can manage many children, like, in the old days, people have 10 kids, you get the older to take care of the younger, that's management. So if you know how to leverage the strength of mothers, your company can be extremely resilient.
We have a couple minutes left. Just wanted to get your thoughts about how can employees, you mentioned environment, reshape the work environment to reduce disadvantages towards mothers or working mothers.
Yeah, so at our company, like we give flexibility to our staff who are mothers. Shout out to Yana, who's going to be giving birth very soon. And, even before the government had policies, we'd give paternity leave more than the industry norm because the first, even few days is very important. Having mother's room, and not just a room that is sort of with a chair. You want to give a proper, comfortable, plush. We even provide breast pump to all our sites, and if we custom build a site for, say, an MNC, we provide all the way to the breast pump, because these little things like not having to bring a huge bag of this equipment to work really helps.
Right.
Having kindergarten near our sites, like right outside here, for example, is another thing that would help. And like I say, also the culture. If you are open for them to have a little bit more time to start picking up, say most of the time tech tools or something, you will find that after the initial phase of learning, they're actually really dedicated and diligent team members.
All right, but that's very interesting, and I certainly hope there's more companies that would adopt that kind of work and arrangements or work environments. Just one final question, Stephanie, before I let you go. What are some of your leadership philosophy in leading such a big company and also expanding at the same time amidst the challenges that we're facing right now?
Yeah, I mean, I think, people are always learning, and that's probably something that we want to be cognizant of, managing a team, as well as over here at work. It's not just managing our internal team, but helping all the companies that are our customers, as well as non-customer community companies. The thing is, what we believe is people can prosper by working together. And the internal company culture of work is one of helping each other. Different team members from different departments would sometimes volunteer their help or talent, and there's no lines, and that's what we advocate for all the companies as well. Even large companies can do that, because everybody has to work, everybody has a KPI, and if they can get some help with that, they would achieve it a lot faster. So on leadership side, encouraging that, as well as understanding that people has a lot of strength. You just have to know how to
Right.
encourage them. Is probably one of the most rewarding things in my job.
That's great. Well, thank you so much, Stephanie, for sharing your thoughts and also your plans to expand work. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.